All right, we're live.
All right. I now call to order the 2123rd regular meeting of the City of College Place City Council. Will the clerk take the roll call, please?
Councilmember Jessup,
Present.
Councilmember Cleveland,
Present.
Councilmember Espinoza,
Present.
Councilmember Peterson,
Present.
Councilmember Williams,
Present.
Councilmember Williams.
Can you not hear me? On my end, it says I'm
Okay, we can hear you now.
okay. Present.
Councilmember Sherman,
Present.
Councilmember Boyle,
Present.
and Mayor Norma Hernandez has asked to be excused. We do have a quorum.
Please join me.
I did not receive any comments. We have one person in the attendees list.
Okay. If anyone in actual or virtual attendance would like to speak, please raise your hand now or do the *9 on a phone. To raise your hand if you're connected by a regular phone. Once recognized, you'll have 5 minutes to speak on any subject that is under the control of the council. Okay, thank you. There's now time for the consent agenda consisting of the agenda for tonight, September 12, 2023, the council meeting minutes from August 22, 2023, the council workshop minutes from September 5, 2023, the appointment confirmation of Chloe Congleton and Allison Peck to the Economic Development, Tourism, and Events Commission, and excusing the absence of Mayor Hernandez. Are there any items the council would like to remove from this consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. And the
I did
motion-
that here, Councilmember Williams.
Aye.
Thank you.
I am not hearing anything from the council chambers. I don't know if it's just me.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can hear now.
My fault. Whereas Constitution Week provides the nation with an opportunity to read and reflect on this important document in America's history, and whereas the Daughters of the American Revolution, including the Columbia River chapter, have promoted and encouraged this week-long commemoration of the Constitution, and whereas September 17, 2023 is celebrated as Constitution Day and marks the 236th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America. I now, therefore, on behalf of Norma L. Hernandez, Mayor of the City of College Place, Washington, do hereby proclaim September 17 through 23, 2023 as Constitution Week for the City of College Place. It's given under the hand and seal as mayor. Pro Tem of the City of College Place, Washington, this 12th day of September 2023. There are no, moving out of public hearings, there are no public hearings on the agenda. And with that, we'll move directly into the action items. There are 9 action items on the agenda tonight. The first action item is the SCBA compressor replacement by Chief Winter. Mike, was he going to present? Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me?
No, you're breaking. You're breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry about the strange circumstances that I'm having to present this to you. I'm headed to Ellensburg to help them manage a fire. As you are aware, with the council agenda item, our previous and existing SCBA compressor, which is the compressor that provides high pressure air into our air packs so we can breathe inside of fires, has broken to the point where we've now consulted 2 different companies to try and repair, and their advice is to replace it with a brand new compressor. The compressor we have currently is about 15 years old. And because of this being kind of an emergency thing, we have to have that air in order to fight structure fires. We're coming to council tonight with a bid from Sourcewell, which is one of the, I'm sure the finance department can explain it better for me. One of the services that we belong to that meet the state bid requirements. And we've selected this compressor system to replace the one we have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You know, was there a, did I miss it? Is there a dollar amount on here, Mike? Did I?
7268.
216. Okay, great. I guess we're right now. Yeah, of course. We'll go through any of the council members to see if there's any questions. Mr. Jessup.
Not at the moment. Thank you.
Mr. Cleveland.
No questions.
Mr. Espinoza.
Just a brief question. Did we get more than one bid to make sure that we're getting the best deal for the city?
So this is through a company, and maybe Mike can explain this better. This is, someone has already gone out to bid for this item, and this was the winning bid, if I understand correctly. Is that right, Mike?
That is correct. So for the last couple of years, we joined these purchasing co-ops, and what it allows for is every year they'll do a bid to essentially get the best price on each item. And Sourcewell is one of several that we belong to. The other ones, did they actually not have this type of product available? So of all of the purchasing co-ops, and we're members of about like 6 of them, this was the only one they actually had these. So that does represent the best bid that Sourcewell received when they essentially put this out to bid.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams, any questions?
Basically just a comment that as we're going, well, first, obviously, of course, this is crucial. As we're going through our budget stuff for this year, we might want to look into putting this into our equipment. I'm drawing a blank on the name, but on a 15-year cycle, so that we're putting away a little money every year, so that we can it can just be a planned purchase every 15 years rather than having our fire department have to limp along and wait for parts and etc. But that's for as we go forward, not now.
I would mention that this item was in our equipment replacement plan. It's just this like sped it up like about 3 years. So,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Ms. Sherman?
Well, a follow-up on that then. So is it shorter? Does it, do we have a shorter life now expected for this new one so that we don't get into this predicament in the future?
Definitely from what we've experienced, yes. So we'll have to tighten the timeframes around this.
I actually didn't have any questions, but Paul has another one later.
Ms. Boyle?
No questions, thank you.
Thanks for the help. This is a generalized question in the same manner that, in the same vein, in that you guys do such a good job of having like, for the holistic, you have a rainy day fund, we have backup funds, so on and so forth. How does that work with all of our services and utilities? Do they have like equipment backup plans? Or like I know we're talking about with the pumps, we're like, hey, listen, we have to have a backup pump so we don't get into an emergency situation. We have a, backup equipment. How does that work with that budgeting to have backup plans in the same vein as Councilmember Williams was asking?
Sure. So with the respective utilities, so the operating fund, they have 60-day reserve in them. And then in addition to that, we do have reserves essentially for the capital funds and things like that. Now, current expense, there is a reserve in there that tends to be the catch-all for police, fire, and community development because those are not utility funds. It tends to be around 17%. And then what we've tried to do was that rainy day fund that was established a couple of years ago, building that up. And we've been working towards that. We just aren't at the goal yet, but there are reserves in the respective funds for this. And then keep in mind that the purpose of 6-year plans is that basically year to year, even though we are a cash-based budget, we still, because we have like a full accrual in the internally balance sheet, we do try to essentially put money away year to year to plan for this as this was cut short from what we were thinking.
Sure. The budgetary piece of that, which again, I know you guys do a really good job with that. Does it also account for like the actual physical equipment on items throughout our facilities and uses of must-have equipment such as this, that you say, we have this must-have equipment, but we know it's getting a little bit older. We have a backup piece of equipment, not that kind of like that wants, needs, and necessity type items, like physically having items in reserve for emergency situations like this?
So as far as if we have like physical, like do we have like extra CBA pump right now? No, but we've been essentially putting away money to essentially stockpile towards it. Now, right. As far as the respective utilities go, we're getting better at that. So like for instance, at well number 6, there's that Ingram variable frequency driving when the permit one ever gets here. We're keeping that Ingram one so we don't end up in this predicament again about waiting for a VFD to finally get here. So we are doing a better job of essentially making sure we have a stockpile of things, if you will, that is in the respective 6-year plans.
On the same page. Thank you for doing that. Appreciate it.
Okay, then I have another question. So if this is on the plan, has there been money already saved toward this, or is the 73,000 just completely, which I know that we have the cash for it. I know that that's fine, but like, did we have money saved for it?
We did have money saved for it, not all of it, because there's still like a couple of years out. So there's like a delta of about 3 or 4 years from my memory of it, but we were saving towards it.
So Mike, I have a quick question. This fund, this is 72,000, but this fund, I don't have it in front of me, but what's the size of this fund that is coming out of? Would you say, I mean, take a guess. It's like, how many million is it? Or I mean,
like the capital account or the checking account?
It's a general expense, isn't it? Or am I?
So Brian, would you have that in front of you as far as equipment replacement, the delta of that? I mean, I do know the current expense, which essentially ends up transferring in and out items year to year, that ends ends up essentially ranging anywhere from around like 9 to 12 million,
Yeah,
depending
yeah.
upon what's going on. So that gives you a flavor of it. And then equipment replacement, that there's essentially inter-fund transfers from utilities or recurring expense depending upon the equipment we're saving for.
I was just looking for the perspective.
Yeah.
So 72,000 of a
Yeah.
$200,000 account or 72 of a 9 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, that's, thank you. Thank you so much. I guess at this point, are there any other additional discussions? Any questions? If not, is there a motion?
I'll motion to allow the fire department to purchase a new SCBA compressor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other additional discussions at this point? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes.
Councilmember Peterson, did you vote? Did you vote?
That,
Oh, gosh.
Is there a timer on the microphone? There are, isn't there?
I don't
When you go green, it'll go off after.
It's timing itself out on you?
Yeah,
Oh.
so just, I just need to be aware of that, so it's all right. Yeah, okay. I'll say aye on that one, and the ayes have it. And the motion is passed. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, I just want to add some about the whole mayor pro tem thing.
Yes.
Because it did occur when I previously worked at City of Colfax, and because it's pro tem, you do still hit, at least there, you still have the ability to vote, and we're classified essentially as the same type of city. So I would believe it would hold true.
Thanks, Mike. I think this came up one time before, and I'm not sure there was, I think the same outcome that you're saying right now. So thank you. Getting me back on track. I appreciate that. Okay, next item is the authority to purchase city fleet vehicles. Mr. Andrews? Thank you. Yeah. All right, we're good. And there's a timer.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good evening, council. So this item is regarding fleet purchases. So over the last couple of years, it kind of started during COVID. State purchasing and some of the purchasing authorities, similar to Sourcewell that we just talked about, have had really short windows to open up to purchase vehicles on the state contract pricing. So there's been a few times that the window has opened up and it's stayed open for a matter of days or weeks, and then they've essentially, it seems like, hit their quota, said we're not making any more vehicles, you can't order off state contract anymore, and that closed up. And so we've missed out on opportunities to purchase vehicles on the timely fashion that we wanted to, and had to go out to bid and tried to find vehicles that were existing on lots and things like that, which can be pretty cumbersome, take time, and doesn't often end in the best pricing. Additionally, recently, there's the plan to purchase a new ambulance in 2024. And recently we found out there was going to be an ambulance coming available at the end of the year that didn't have anybody's name on it. And so we were trying to scramble to get our name put on it. And before I could get to council to ask for authority to purchase it, it sold out from underneath us. So ambulances are being quoted out at approximately 500 days right now once we order them. So we're working on that, and we might have a lead on being able to get our name on one sooner. But regardless, there's kind of been some delays on having to take a vehicle specifically to council and say, we want to purchase this vehicle. So at this point, I'm recommending that council authorizes the city administrator to go ahead and authorize those fleet purchases, so long as they align with the previously approved by council capital equipment replacement plan. So last year, there was the plan for 23 through 28 that was approved by resolution. And we're working on budgeting and planning for next year. So there's a preliminary plan that we have put together for 24 through 29. Similar, but we tweak things a little bit each year. So I guess we're recommending that you authorize the city administrator to make purchases so long as they align with either of those plans. Does that make sense? Does anyone have questions?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat again? The process is to speed up. Your point is to speed up the process.
Speed up the
And
process.
The delay is happening where?
So there's times where it comes up where this vehicle is going to be available, or our fleet manager has been led to believe that there's going to be a state purchasing window opening up this month that will allow us to order off of state contract. We're not sure how long that's going to stay open, if it's going to be a matter of days or weeks or maybe months,
Okay.
but we're not really sure. So to avoid missing out on that opportunity, we wanted to be proactive and have the authority to the city administrator to go ahead and allow those purchases to be made, rather than get that pricing, come in front of council at a later date and say, a lot of times it goes through consent agenda because it's already been discussed as the capital plan, but
So it could come down to a day or two at some point.
yeah. So if we found out that this vehicle is available for order on state contract or through purchasing co-op like Sourcewell or something, we could go ahead and move on it and order it rather than wait until the next council meeting.
Fantastic. Okay. And I'll go through the council members for any questions or comments. Mr. Jessup,
Not at the moment. Thank you.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Espinoza.
So a couple of questions as I read the document. Two things. What are the vehicles that you anticipate you'll be needing? I see police, the lease is up. You talked about an ambulance. What other vehicles are you thinking about? And what is the cost roughly of those vehicles that you're needing for the city?
Sure. So Sherry, if you could pull up the preliminary equipment plan for 24 through 29, that kind of shows, let's see, the early draft one there. So you can see if you follow the column through for fiscal year 24, we left 23 on here because this was preliminary and we wanted to kind of include some of the stuff that was already slated for or on order this year. But if you go down the column, the first thing is potentially a generator for City Hall. I think that one's a City Hall generator. And you get down into the fire department and there's the ambulance. And then they've got their turnouts. And then moving into police department, there's the police leases, and there's I believe 6 of them coming up for renewal, or the leases will be ending in 2024, which is a concern of mine, to be honest with you, because when those leases end, we're gonna have to turn those vehicles back in. And if we're not ahead of it on being able to order new vehicles, I don't want to end up in a situation where we have to turn in vehicles and there's not new vehicles for officers ready, if that makes sense. So, and then there's some new police vehicles slated on there. Sorry, trying to flip through. Sure I get to the right page here. My page is out of order. Moving into, there's nothing for parks or stormwater in 2024, getting down into the streets. That kind of orange highlighted one is a utility vehicle that we're planning to hopefully increase our snow and ice removal capabilities and hopefully add some liquid treatment capabilities. So instead of replacing just a regular utility vehicle, we wanted to outfit it with more of a stellar unit so we could have a liquid tank on it and a plow. Then a couple pickups. So, I mean, so if you look at this by column, each year there's just various things that are slated out on I wish my fleet manager was here to say exactly what the cycles are. I think they're pretty commonly about 10 or 12 years for vehicles. Police vehicles, I think, are set at 6. And so we're trying to capture the ones that are coming up for replacement when they're due, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see.
Does
here
that kind of answer your question?
about $1.9 million, so almost $2 million in just 2024 fiscal 2024 for equipment and trucks. Is that right? It's almost $2 million.
That may be accurate, yes.
So you're asking for us to give authority to the city manager to just make decisions to buy fleet as it becomes available to the tune of $2 million if necessary?
If necessary, yes.
Okay. And the other question is, what do you guys do with used fleet? With all the trucks and everything that the city has? Do you fix those, repurpose them? Do you sell them?
So when a vehicle gets replaced, the piece of equipment that's going away goes to surplus. So when we replace a vehicle, the existing vehicle gets slated for surplus. Usually in the consent agenda item, I'll list the VIN number for it, and it's the approval to purchase the new vehicle and surplus the old one. We tend to stockpile them till we have a few, and then we'll take them to auction. We're actually looking at, there's an online auction specifically for government vehicles called, what's it called? Draw a blank on it. I can't remember the name of it, but there's an online auction specifically for government vehicles. And when I worked at the county, we used it and we had really good luck at getting a lot more money out of it. You don't pay the auction fees from the seller, just the buyer does. And so we're going to try that, I think, with the next batch, but we'll send a handful of vehicles and equipment to surplus at once and we'll recoup the value based on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Ms. Williams?
Well, I just want to clarify that when we say we're giving authority to buy $2 million worth of stuff, it's $2 million worth of stuff that we have already approved. It's not
That's
just a random.
What we were just looking at was the preliminary budget or preliminary plan for 24 through 29. I have in here the approved plan for 23 through 28, and I think it varies somewhat because at that point there were pieces of equipment that we didn't know we were going to need for new employees and new positions and things like that. But generally it follows the same.
Right. I just want to make sure that it's clear to any listeners or anything that we are not, the city council is not just turning over our approval authority to the city manager. This is simply basically a pre-approval of what we approved that we're going to spend this money, and then instead of saying, oh, but then you have to come ask us again, we're saying you already have approval again, which is the only thing that we can intelligently do when we're looking at almost 2 years in advance to order something. So yeah, it's still, I guess I'm struggling with how to say this appropriately, but we're not just giving Mike a $2 million blank check and saying, go have fun. We're saying spend this money as we have authorized you to spend it, but in ways that help you get a better deal.
We have a plan of equipment replacement when it becomes available, when we're allowed to order it. The city administrator will execute our prior instructions in a sense, rather than having to ask again.
Exactly.
Thank you. Much better way than what I was trying to stumble around and say.
Exactly. Just to tie that in, I mean, with these 6-year plans, we go through a fairly exhaustive public process. Or at the end, I mean, it has 2 hearings and stuff. So, so by the time you all approve it, I think those 6-year plans have been beaten to death at that point. And the big issue is the way the supply chain has gone, not acting upon the plan and having to go for approval again. We're basically driving up our own costs because then we're losing equipment that we could get at a lower cost and then dragging the whole thing out of the greater cost of the taxpayer. So this is about saving money and being nimble based upon all the planning documents that you're all approving at the end of each fiscal year for the next 6.
Ms. Sherman?
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Boyle?
No questions. I think this is just smart.
Mike, correct me, but also the consent agenda would have included a line item for the purchase of a vehicle. Would that be a part of that structure? The detail when, I mean, in other words, there are items that we pass that would be included in it, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so it's not
Yeah.
like we would also be aware.
Yeah.
So we've gone through the budget process. We know it's coming, but then when the actual purchase takes place, when you place order, it would then show up on our list, our radar, that it had happened, right?
Correct. And again, also, you're able to trace where the expenditure is coming from because on the equipment replacement plans you all approve in the how it's funded column, it says where it's being funded out of. So
a couple lines there. Okay, is there any other additional discussion at this time? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 23-051, authorizing the city administrator to make fleet purchases as long as they align with either the 2023 to 2028 ER&R plan or the preliminary 2024 to 2029 ER&R plan.
I'll second.
At this point, are there any additional discussion, comments? So at this time, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The motion is passed. Thank you. Next item, Mr. Andrews, you're back on the stage. Present the additional contingency for the Southwest 6th and Southwest 8th sidewalk project.
Thank you. Yes, this one, as I think probably most of you are aware of, we've got a couple one sidewalk project for 2 different streets going on right now. Right over here on Southwest 6th and Southwest 8th Street. The projects have been going relatively smoothly, although with any project like this, there are things that we find unexpectedly, often little things like, oh, here's, storm drain that's not at the depth we thought it was, and we need to adjust it or things like that. When we opened up, when the contractor cut into Southwest 6th and started to remove some of the asphalt for the sidewalk, the curb and gutter and the sidewalk, it became very apparent the condition of a lot of that asphalt between College Avenue and Bade was in pretty rough shape. So we asked them for some options on improving the asphalt as part of the project. So when we buttoned it up, it would be a nice clean road rather than something that's going to continue to fall apart and cause potholes. With that, within the existing contingency, we were able to authorize a relatively thin overlay of that stretch. So that included a edge grind down to the curb so it would tie in smoothly. And we asked the contractor to go ahead and move forward with that. So when they went ahead and did that, we realized that, there was some additional, the road was pretty thin. And so all of that to say, we're going to put the road back, but there's going to be more work to be done there. But as part of this, we had $91,000, a little bit over that set contingency. That overlay is taking up about $65,000 of that. Just to make sure the projects keep moving forward and there's not additional delays. We're asking to move the $32,000 that was previously slated for the block resurfacing program over to, which was going to be used on Southeast Sixth Street over to the southwest and Southwest Sixth and Southwest Eighth Street projects, which would cover the overlay portion or help cover that and give us additional contingency to make sure that there's not any other delays if other issues come up as we continue these two projects. Any questions?
I think at this point we'll go through the council members for any questions. Mr. Jessup?
If I understand this stuff, when this stuff comes up like this is one of those things you can't really see coming. It's like when you start digging it up, you start realizing what's there.
A lot of time that is absolutely the case. The contractor opens up the road and we find something we didn't know was there, an existing condition that then needs to be addressed. And so we try to plug contingency in so that we can make field calls to, okay, go ahead and fix that, make this change, adjust this, that, or whatever. And I still think we likely have enough contingency in there with the 91,000. I'm not anticipating any more significant changes coming up with these projects. But again, I don't want to run into a situation where we do, and then suddenly I have to tell the contractor, wait until I can go to council next time to ask for more money. So there was money sitting there from a project that got delayed. That's not going to happen until next year. Mike and I thought it made sense to go ahead and move that over to this project so that it's there to cover any additional items that come up, so we don't end up in any further delays and further impacts to the residents on those two streets.
Well, I always appreciate the, legal, safe and compliant, of course. And then also appreciate as well working within the sense that we're not wasting time and in this case, money.
Sure.
By waiting. So thank you for working on that efficiently.
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Espinoza?
No questions.
Ms. Williams?
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Sherman?
No questions.
Ms. Boyle?
No questions.
Just a kind of a curiosity question for me, I guess, I guess as of it, it's interesting. We're doing sidewalks on the, that'd be the 6th and Bay Street. And it was interesting that intersection was disrupted. And it's sidewalks, but yet it's like, and is that because of the thin overlay that would cause issues or?
So the intersection primarily was going to get interrupted or torn up quite a bit to fix some grade issues of the sidewalks being put in. At that time, when we were working with Anderson Perry engineers for design, it came up that we had a water valve cluster in the middle of that intersection that was problematic for us. And so we asked them, if we're going to be impacting this intersection already, what would it take to include that portion? So when we bid the water valves as an alternate bid, being paid for out of water funds, not through the grant funding.
Okay.
But because the road and that intersection was already going to be impacted, we wanted to tackle another issue at the same time. So that's why that intersection got torn up to the extent that it did.
I was just, yeah.
But there was also a storm drain and a storm manhole in there that needed to be adjusted. And that was one of the items that ended up being, when they opened up the road or dug down to it to tie in, the manhole itself was damaged and needed to be replaced. And so there was a small change order to replace that manhole and put in some different pipe.
Yeah, once again, curiosity that why that would impact the intersection.
No,
yeah,
great question.
No. Yeah, great response. I guess at this time, are there any additional discussion items? If not, can I have a motion?
Motion to authorize additional contingency funds in the amount of $32,000 to be available for the Southwest 6th and Southwest 8th sidewalk project.
Is there a second?
Second.
At this point, is there any other additional discussions that want to take place? Not seeing any. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Guys are in favor. Vote is unanimous and is passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, Mr. Rizzatello will present the acceptance of the State Recreation Conservation Office Youth Athletic Facilities Grant for Veterans Park.
Thank you. So this has been in the capital facility plan for some time because when Haven Homes put in Veterans Park, they gave the land and some playground equipment, but that was the limit to it. So through Park Board, there was discussion around pickleball, basketball court, restroom out there, stuff like that. And this grant will actually go pay for that. So we predicted years ago that we would get the 50% grant. And in fact, we did get, this is the 50% grant. So this is essentially getting your authority for us to essentially sign this grant agreement. And then we'll commence engineering shortly. And then the construction of this would have to wrap up by summer 2026. And we believe this park will move a lot more nimble because it's just bearing parkland. It doesn't have, luckily, it doesn't have Army Corps Creek and a bunch of other nightmarish things that mess us up. So, yeah.
562,000.
Correct.
Oh, Mike. Yeah.
Is the grant?
Well, that's the total project.
Project.
So the grant is half of that. Yeah, so the grant ends up being half of that. And then we've been projecting essentially the local match should be coming out of the REIT 2, which we're going to be spending that for Lions Park. But then after that gets done, it'll be accumulating money again because that was created 6 years ago specifically for park related items.
That's right. Yeah. Now I'll go through the council members for any questions or comments. Mr. Jessup?
No, thank you as always.
Yeah. Mr. Cleveland?
No questions.
Mr. Espinoza?
And just a comment, that's always exciting to see projects like these that are just going to add to our community. So thank you, Mike, for the grant. That's exciting.
Ms. Williams?
No questions.
Thank you. Ms. Sherman?
No questions.
Ms. Boyle?
No questions.
Is there any additional discussions at this time? Not seeing any. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 23-0552, which authorizes acceptance of youth athletic facility grant and permits city administrator to sign necessary documents.
Second.
Second. Is there any other additional discussion at this point? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is passed. Next on the action item list is the resolution of support for the Blue Mountain Community Foundation discretionary grant for 2023 for Lions Park, presented by Mr. Rizzatello.
Tying to my earlier comments. We're finally getting near finish line. We'll get this thing out to bid as the various iterations of this have come before you all. We try to take out our crystal ball, but us being paranoid, who knows what this final bid is going to be. So we're trying to do an end run and accumulate as much money as possible. And this is an example of that.
We'll now go through the council members for any questions or comments. Mr. Jessup,
No, thank you.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Espinoza,
No questions.
Ms. Williams,
No questions.
Ms. Sherman,
No questions.
and Ms. Boyle.
No questions.
At this point, is there any additional discussion? Not seeing any. Is there a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 23-053 in support of the Blue Mountain Community Foundation discretionary grant application for College Place Lions Park renovation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
At this point, is there any additional discussion? Not.
Aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you. Next item, Mike, I think you're on this. The next item on the agenda is the resolution support for the economic development, administrative economic adjustment grant for the construction of reservoir number 4 and the College Place municipal water system. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so this one is an extremely heavy lift, and that's why we're starting to write the various grants to actually cover this early. So right now we're working on engineering through JUB and Public Works Board money to get to 100% engineering. But then we have to start getting together the construction money and make this happen. And really in need of this is many, and it's in our water system plan as far as having many more hours of the water storage. And as it stands currently, the west side of the community, while we do have storage, it comes from the east side. So we have the 2 tanks over off of Larch and Whitman, and then the 500,000 gallon steel one over at the Public Works yard. We're trying to oversize this thing to accommodate future growth, both across from the high school, the Stone Creek development, and Martin Airfield. And we're trying to do this so that way we only have to build it once. City of Pasco made that mistake on Road 68. That's why there's 2 water towers next door to each other. So we're trying to do this one time. So this granting application would be to try to get $3 million from the Economic Development Administration. The construction cost would be around $15 million. We'll be putting in for congressional appropriations as well, water grants, and also the newer developments come on the pike. They're going to have to pay their fair share as well. But we're just trying to size this appropriately so we only have to go to this one time and not have to revisit this.
Excellent. I'll go with the council members for any questions or comments. Mr. Jessup.
Is it still in the works that this is one of those ones where we can have revenue generation with this, I don't know, the cell towers and so on and so forth?
I can chime in on that. That is certainly a potential. We're working with JUB on the tank design. While we want to be able to accommodate that, we don't want to have a significant cost to us to design and build the tank to accommodate that infrastructure. So this style of tank, in order to get conduit for fiber and things up there, we're trying to figure out what that looks like for that infrastructure, whether it's on the inside of the tank. So the access to the top of the tank actually goes up the middle of the tank on this one.
So you gotta make sure that it doesn't cost more than what the revenue would come at.
Exactly. So if the cost pencils out, then yes, that would be the case, but we don't want to spend a whole bunch of money to make a little bit of money in revenue.
Yeah.
Mr. Cleveland.
No questions.
Mr. Espinoza.
I think this is a great way to be strategic and thinking about the future of our community to plan for future growth. So this is only going to position future housing and the school's going to go in that vicinity. So I think it's great to be moving in this direction.
Thank you. Mike, quick question. For comparison purposes, the 2 tanks over on the northeast side, those are how many gallons?
Those are about 250,000 gallons, so about 250,000 gallons each tank over there. So I mean, in essence, this one tank would be equivalent to our entire water storage system at the moment.
Okay.
However, with the amount of stuff that, given the fact we already have a deficiency, and then you have the Stone Creek development coming online, and then the Martin Airfield annexation, which are all entertaining, we definitely have the need coming up here.
And let me ask a question I probably an answer I should know. The whole system, our system is all interconnected. In other words, 1 million gallons there could make its way
Correct.
northeast.
So the tower will have to be built essentially at the same elevation of our existing tower so that the water levels
doesn't overpower.
equalize.
Yeah.
So because the system will all be tied together. So while if there's significantly more draw on the east side, it's my understanding that our existing tank might drop a little bit faster or vice versa, but essentially it should all stay at the same level.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
No, yeah. And I was just thinking of the interconnecting systems where we have a couple, hybrids out there, but okay, yeah.
Yep.
And Ms. Williams?
No questions.
She did that.
Sorry, I'm like, okay, I have thoughts, but are any of them important enough to raise the level of question? And the answer is no.
No, now I was curious.
Okay, I don't have any questions. You can have one of mine, Melanie.
Ms. Sherman?
No questions.
Ms. Boyle?
No questions.
Ms. Williams, are there any additional discussions?
Okay, fine. I was just thinking about, and I'm sure that they already have this all under consideration, but one of the things that's easy to miss is making sure that saving money on capital doesn't require more maintenance later on. And so I'm also would be concerned about that as we're looking at whether it makes sense to do the fiber optics, et cetera. Even if it only costs us a little bit more in capital, if it turns out that that's going to really up the maintenance cost in the future, it may not make that much sense. There.
Thank you for your comment. Those are definitely things we're looking at.
I figured you were.
Working with the leases on the existing tower, I will say, is cumbersome and time consuming. So yes, we are certainly taking that in consideration.
I guess under the heading, if there's any additional discussion, Mike, this 15 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a lot of zeros there. So this money, we've had discussions in the past about sewage treatment. That's in a different room than, obviously than those discussions where we've talked about big numbers there.
Yeah.
This is in a different room, right?
Correct.
All of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now geographically, you may think of it in the same room because it's on the grounds of the wastewater treatment plant
Yeah.
because we have a natural bluff there. So that's why the thought was to put the tower
Yeah.
there because it allows gravity flow. But it's two separate utilities, wastewater is the treatment plant, and then this is the water utility.
And we've discussed this, but now we're talking about.
We
We haven't resolved all those issues yet,
We've
but yeah.
put placeholders in the capital facility plan for this last 6 years. However, they were much smaller because inflation and essentially once we finally started to get some details on what we believed was going out like on the western periphery and southwest periphery of the community, we realized that we need to be looking more so at 1 million gallons. Initially, we were thinking 500,000, similar to the steel tank. But again, we're trying to avoid the Pasco Road 68 issue.
Thanks, Mike. Is there any other discussions? Can I have a motion?
A motion to approve resolution number 23-054, supporting the city's grant application to the Federal Economic Development Administration Economic Adjustment Program pertaining to the College Place Reservoir number 4 construction project.
I'll second.
Favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion, thank you. I was gonna tell you.
Thank you.
No, I'm sorry. It's turning on and off. It's not me, I don't think. Oh, hopefully, I don't know. Mr. Gonzalo will present the resolution of support for the Federal Department of Transportation Neighborhood Access and Equality Planning Grant Program.
Okay, thank you. So as part of the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed last year, they actually created some new grant programs in Federal Department of Transportation, specifically aimed around equitable access for multimodal infrastructure like sidewalks, bike paths, things like that. And essentially it's divided up into two buckets, planning and engineering, and then implementation. So what we're going to aim to do here is to put in this grant to essentially do planning and engineering around getting plans for at least sidewalk on one side of every street in the city. Because this grant program believe it or not, does not follow that whole federal classification thing. Because it's part of the Inflation Reduction Act, they exempted it from that. So we want to see if we can get this money to go engineer all the sidewalk. And if we do get that, then we could go back the following year to get the money to go build all of it. And then essentially finally get one side of a street in this community with sidewalk. And looking at the NOFO surrounding this grant application, directly speaks to the whole sidewalk inequality aspect. So I think we're actually sitting pretty good for this.
So make 450 is just for engineering.
Correct.
Yeah, wow. Huh, okay. Well, now go through the council members for any questions or comments. Mr. Jessup?
Speaking of which, I see this says can apply for the waiver. Is there ways in which we can help support that waiver application or give us a better chance?
So we'll put in the grant application. The way the waiver works is if they do fund you, when we negotiate the grant agreement with them, they'll essentially email over a waiver document and then we fill it out, and then it's up to them whether or not they'll approve it. So for example, with the earmark for the wastewater treatment plant, we definitely want to get a waiver on that, because even though we have the other funding, there's nuances with it what made it really confusing. So we actually applied for the waiver and received it. So that's already occurred based upon our demographic data for the treatment plant. So I really wouldn't think that they would differ from that with this project.
Perfect, thanks.
Mr. Cleveland?
No questions, but I'm all for closing sidewalk gaps.
Yeah. Mr. Espinoza?
I think it would just be a very good complement to the improvements that are taking place now of the sidewalks. And just to finish off, a lot of the roads would make it more accessible to people in wheelchairs and, people that are looking for a safe place to walk at night and just during the day. So I think it's a wonderful initiative for our community.
Ms. Williams?
No questions.
Ms. Sherman?
No questions.
Ms. Boyle?
No questions.
Is there any other additional discussion at this point? Let's see. Can I have a motion at this time?
Are you, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 23-055, which supports the city's grant application to the Federal Department of Transportation Neighborhood Access and Equity Planning Grant Program for College Place Sidewalk Planning and Engineering Project.
Second.
Second, great, thank you. Is there any additional discussion at this time? No. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
Aware, our microphone keeps turning on right before we vote. It's like
It does.
1915.
It does.
I talked that whole
The
time.
whole time, it'll stay on.
And then as soon as you asked for a vote, it clicked off.
My mind is too.
But earlier when I hadn't been talking, we turned it on to vote and you asked for the vote and it clicked off, like it was on
Like
for just a couple seconds.
It will not let us.
It's
vote.
literally 1915 over here.
Maybe like a maximum number of channels.
Oh, do you think that could be it?
So you're kicking.
We have to
us
go
out
in a
of the
wave? Why do they get priority,
We
Mike?
could test it, like everyone turn on their mics and turn them off.
Cause see, now it's just staying on. Now it's just staying on.
Yeah, now
It-
it's,
I bet that's it.
It is interesting.
try to click yours all on.
Yeah.
Yours is on, yours off.
Mine went off.
Oh,
We just clicked ours on.
That explained why I suddenly can't hear Councilmember Peterson right after every vote.
Thank you.
Well, we'll be contacting the code people to figure that one out.
as a matter of decorum, then should we not unmute ourselves when we're voting and just,
Yeah. Yeah.
what was that? Right.
Yeah.
But as far as us voting, as long as the clerk hears us.
Yeah.
And it's recorded accurately, we're good. So maybe we just won't unmute ourselves specifically when we're saying the ayes. If there's any confusion, the clerk can clarify.
Yeah. We get through this. Sorry. And I thought it was me. Okay, 5.08, next resolution of support is a resolution of support for the Federal Department of Transportation Reconnection Communities Grant SR 125 quarter Myra to College Planning. Mr. Stahl.
Okay, thank you. So this item, you'll notice on the recommended action, we extended it to Old Milton Highway. And the main reason, and this will be a future council meeting, but we are going to be forwarding an annexation request for some property south of Christensen and McKiernan's property, so it would make sense to look at it all the way at Old Milton. So general concept here, this is another grant program that they recently created as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. And a couple things come to mind here. Over the years, we've received complaints about some of the noise in State Route 125 between Commercial Drive and Larch, namely around Country Estates area. And then Napa Edition. So if awarded this grant, we would essentially examine the parameters for putting some sort of noise mitigation in there. And then also there has been a number of citizen requests for some sort of overhead pedestrian crossing thing between like Larch and Tamarson. So basically to not have to go to Meadowbrook. But again, we don't have resources for something like that on our own accord. But this program does cover stuff like that for federal highways that have essentially bisected communities. And State Route 125 has done that. We have incorporated parts of the community on both sides of that corridor. So really this would be about noise mitigation and then some sort of additional pedestrian bike crossing overhead to connect the two sides.
Mike, can you pull up a map? I have an orientation issue here. Can you show, just so if anybody's online too,
Yeah.
it's highlighted, it's.
So really it's from Myra Road and 125, which would be in the upper right-hand corner of that map, all the way down to the lower left corner of that map, because 125 runs diagonal. And it would be examining that whole corridor because we have neighborhoods on both sides. And this really, if we do get awarded these grant funds, it essentially would get the state more into the fold because they historically have not been. Oh, thank you. Because they historically have not really been in the fold of the state for communities that were established after 1950. They tend to take a very passive approach to wanting to rectify things. So this would help with that.
Excellent. We'll go through the council members now for any questions or comments. Mr. Jessup?
By noise mitigation, I mean, we're talking like those potential walls, like those cobblestone looking walls and things of that nature that you would typically see in a bigger city.
It really runs the gamut. There's some areas where they do the concrete and brick and noise mitigation walls, but then there's other areas where they're able to essentially use like trees and additional shrubs and things to mitigate the noise with a gentle hill or so. So really, we wouldn't know until the results of the study would indicate what to do. The state definitely does have appropriate additional right-of-way to do something, so
to get them involved. So obviously I'm all about grants and such, but are there, guess I'm trying to think about what was spoken of publicly in agenda items in the past. Are there potential plans in this area, this corridor, to which cars would be slowed down anyway, and thus really kind of reducing the need for sound blocking, whatever, something? So for example, obviously, I don't know how it works, but it seems to me that they're going that fast. That kind of contributes to the noise and semis, trucks, so on and so forth. But if we have future plans in a way that it's going to be reduced speed anyway, there may be necessitate the need for a noise blocking wall or retaining walls or shrubbery or whatnot.
I would say that part of the corridor specifically between Commercial Drive and then like the Meadowbrook area, there really isn't other crossings there. So I think you would always still, I mean, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I mean, they'd figure that one out. But because you don't really have the crossings, there still would be quicker traffic through there. Now, it is true that the state at some point has said they wanted to do additional treatments on the intersections, but that would be much further to the south. They've said Meadowbrook, but mainly they've looked at the College Avenue intersection and then Old Milton Highway. So that's quite a ways to the southwest from that area over by Country Estates and Napa Edition. And then what I will also say is that if this grant application did get approved, it then will open us up for the implementation grant. And that would not only deal with like the sound walls and things like that, but potentially it may motivate we could essentially partner with the state in some of those intersection treatments if it was the desire of the council at the time, could essentially get that on a quicker track, because the cost I've seen to deal with at the state level is high enough for, I think, without additional assistance, that's going to be a multi-decade endeavor. So because to deal with all the intersections, it was like north of $36 million.
Just that section. So obviously, I mean, within the grant, just personally speaking and just thinking about it, just the concept of having anything like that right there, that's not natural barrier. And I assume we'd probably do within the grant engineering to see if it even makes a difference for the houses up on the bluff anyway, like would the wall even make a difference? So I guess I'm just reaching out early on just to say, leery of having wall structure there and to see if it even be necessary. So I appreciate the grants as always.
Yep.
Mr. Cleveland.
No questions. Natural barriers preferred, but not necessarily required. We'll wait till we hear, I guess.
Mr. Espinoza.
No questions.
Mike, I think it was several years ago that there were discussions, and maybe they're still going of Myra being extended due south, roundabout at SR 125. Are those still active conversations? And I think an offshoot of that was that the speed then would be reduced dramatically on SR 125. And I don't know where that's at. I think they were talking about putting that street that road all the way through.
Yeah, so the city of Walla Walla, they have conducted the engineering plans for most of it, but that's really predicated on the city of Walla Walla passing their own tax increment financing district for that area. So if you were extrapolated out on the schedule we did ours, that would put them to create the TIF out to next spring. And then by the time they could bond against it and stuff would be the following winter. So we are some years out on that one, but it is true. City of Walla Walla has expressed a desire, as has the state, to turn the Myra intersection into a traffic circle of sorts.
Yeah.
And really for that part of the corridor, I mean, I don't believe they would find like traffic walls near Commercial Drive because it's commercial and you don't really need it. It's really that part where there's residential on both sides between when you pass Best Med up until you get to the old Pacific Power large property where you have the senior manufactured home park on the north and then Knapp Addition to the south.
Yeah, good point. Ms. Williams?
No questions.
Ms. Sherman?
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Boyle?
No questions. Thanks.
So if there's any other additional discussion this time, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 23-056, which supports the city's grant application to the Federal Department of Transportation Connected Communities Program for SR 125 corridor Myra to Old Milton Highway Planning Project.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And if there's not any other additional discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is passed. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. We're at your mercy. 5.09. Next is acceptance of the State Department of Commerce Planning Grant. Mr. Rizzatello again.
Thank you. So this is accepting a grant from the state of Washington to Department of Commerce. So this grant was essentially given to us based upon formula that was determined upon median income and then population. And this is to satisfy conditions that the state legislature enacted as part of House Bill 1181 and Senate Bill 5187. Historically, the Comprehensive Plans and Growth Management Act did not deal with climate change or climate planning at all. And the state legislature actually has now mandated it for all communities. So that is this grant should hopefully pay for all of that. But it is a requirement now for comprehensive plans. And if we were not to do that, the way the Growth Management Act is written, essentially we wouldn't be able to get grants and other good things like that. So really important.
Mike, I have a question. How do you find out about these issues that are coming up? I mean, just out of curiosity, once again, I'm off subject here, but I apologize.
Well, I mean, it's really discussed at City Managers Association conferences, and then also the Municipal Research Services Center. They send out newsletters all the time that cover this sort of stuff. And then just through networking, you hear of things.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Mike. Well, I'll go through the council members for any questions or comments. Mr. Jessup?
No, but thank you.
Mr. Cleveland?
No questions.
Mr. Espinoza?
Are we obligated to take any action if we receive the grant around the community, or is it mainly to be compliant with state legislature?
It's to be compliant with the state legislature, but the new chapter that they have essentially created as part of growth management, it has a lot of denser targets around like greenhouse gases and things of that nature. So, I mean, really, we're just going to have to thread the needle about, hey, we're trying to satisfy this thing, but we can't be overly, and we can essentially overshoot where it tanks the local economy either. So we're going to be really careful with that. In fact, this reminds me of a issue when I was over in Colfax. We don't deal with it yet, but over there they have the whole shoreline management plan concept, and the consultants over there were saying anytime a building catches on fire, you couldn't rebuild it because it's by a concrete river, and we had to fight them over it. So I imagine it's going to create a similar back and forth. So we're just going to really be engaged on this.
Yeah, because I think that if, grants are amazing, but if we're obligated to doing things that are going to affect our community negatively, it's something that we need to be cognizant of. And it sounds like you're aware, so I appreciate that.
Good point. Ms. Williams?
I think this could actually be a really positive for us because a lot of our water issues are probably tied to climate change. And so recognizing that in our planning documents could help us qualify for more grants on our water storage side and for like digging deeper wells, etc. So no questions other than that.
Good point. Thank you. Ms. Sherman?
No question. Thank you.
Ms. Boyle?
No questions. Thanks, Mike.
Are there any other additional discussions at this point? Any questions? Is there a motion?
Councilmember Williams, I will move to approve resolution number 23-057, which authorizes acceptance of State of Washington climate grant and permits city administrator, mayor, or designee to sign necessary documents.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And lastly here, are there any additional questions or discussion that anyone has? Okay. Okay, right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is passed. Thank you. We have this is the add-on at the end of 510. Yeah, great, fantastic. The last action item is multifamily housing for tax exemption. Ms. Caldwell, please.
Thank you. And I know you guys have all read the information that I provided to you on this, right?
All of it.
Thanks to Sherry for getting this on, to Madam Clerk for getting this on the agenda. So last year, in December of last year, you all passed a multifamily tax exemption framework within our code to encourage development of affordable housing. As part of that code, you are authorized to set the fee for the application. It is an administratively intense process for the application and the monitoring, the yearly monitoring. The city has not set a fee for the application, and we just received one, or we knew one was coming down the line as of today. We just received it today. And so we're asking that you authorize the community development director to assess a fee, set the fee for assessment for the application, reapplication, recording fees, and various other fees that are allowed within the ordinance.
Is there a timeliness with this? Is there an issue with that as far as the passing of this? What did I understand? Was that a comment that as far as?
No, we notified, we prepared, or I should say, I prepared an application process, a checklist for staff, the actual application, and then a summary of what the program is and how to apply. And all of that includes, you must pay the application fee. So, and the application fee is to recoup or defray some of our costs. So it's necessary and in the public's interest.
Okay, I understand.
do that.
Okay. We'll now go through the council members for any questions or comments. Mr. Jessup?
This is just the fee for the applicant who
That's
is
correct.
applying to have a multifamily facility, duplex, multi-building or whatever. No.
That's correct. And for example, Walla Walla has set their fee within their code at $500 for the application and for the renewal of the application.
How often is the renewal? I'm sorry, how often is the renewal?
It depends on the length of the exemption, 8 years or 12 years, and then you can renew.
That's
If
right.
you apply for 20 years, then there's just one period.
Yeah, that's right. I remember this conversation. Okay, thank you. There you go.
Yeah.
Mr. Cleveland?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Espinoza?
Do you plan to be in line with Walla Walla in terms of the cost of the fee or a little lower? Can you give us a ballpark? what
I
that would
can
look like?
take direction and give that back to city administration and the community development director. Generally speaking, my experience is we go in line with what Walla Walla does
Okay.
to keep that competitive advantage.
Yeah, because I think it will be in our best interest to keep it to incentivize development and by making fees very less costly or affordable, you know, for people to come and say, hey, College Place is friendly. Let's look at them to build and expand and stuff like that. So
Great, I will relay that.
Are you suggesting like $4.99?
I'm suggesting something in line with Walla Walla or maybe even a little less. Yeah, maybe like, I don't know, 250, you know? Yeah.
$4.79.
That's. Yeah. Ms. Williams?
No questions.
Thank you. Ms. Sherman?
No questions, just smart comments.
Ms.
Or
Boyle?
done. Well, I didn't want to say the word after smart that I should have said. You know, snarky comment.
No questions for me.
Excellent.
Boy.
Are there any other additional discussions or questions at this time? I'm not seeing any. Is there a motion?
Councilmember Williams, I'll move to authorize the Director of Community Development to set multifamily housing tax exemption administrative fees pursuant to College Place Municipal Code, Chapter 3.54 in such amount to reasonably defray the cost to the city to administer the MFTE program.
I'll second.
I guess under additional discussions, are you clear? I mean,
Yes.
I mean, as far as just Matt, what are your thoughts right now on that? The match or?
Yes, my thoughts would be to communicate to the director that the city is giving him the authority to set the fees and with the understanding that it will be in the ballpark of the fees for Walla Walla.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Any other discussions, questions?
And I don't think that he will question that.
Okay. Rounding errors, right? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is passed. Thank you. The lack of a gavel sound, it looks like. There's one administrative report on the agenda tonight. Mr. Rizzatano will present the transportation benefit.
I won't reread the whole thing. I just want to make sure it was on there. So y'all take a look at the, for those that weren't at the workshop and then also for the residents, because we do have a webpage out and the surveys out and we've been spreading information about it. But just as a refresher, the city council went through the process of creating the transportation benefit district about 6.5 years ago. And then the revenue element of it wasn't acted upon. So we basically have like a ghost TBD that's there, but isn't collecting anything. And then meanwhile, our costs have skyrocketed, as you've seen just with the CDBG item with the sidewalk. And while we federally have classified classified the roads we can. Our ability to do more has now hit an end on that. So really, if we're about maintaining the local roads and getting off the 200-year replacement cycle, this is what is needed. So we're spreading the word, and Utilities Commission, they recommended it. The Economic Development Commission, this has been reviewed with them, and they'll take action the next meeting on it. But really, we're hopefully teeing this up for passage of sorts in October, so that way it could be incorporated in the budget if that is so the desire of council.
At this point, do any of the council members have any questions for Mike regarding this, or? Okay. Information reports. There are no information reports on this agenda. Executive session. We do not have an executive session tonight. And closing items. Is there any other business for the good of the order at this time that anyone wants to discuss or bring up? Nobody. Do I have a motion to conclude?
I'll make a motion to conclude the meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
If there's no objection, the meeting is concluded at 8:27 p.m. Thank you.
Bye.
I may have